Morning. This is episode two. This is, I think we have dubbed it yesterday, the Two Kings Challenge. I'm Frank McFarland here with Brian King. It's not a lot of time between our first episode and today. We decided to do a second one based on what happened yesterday to kind of go through a little bit of our plans and our goals for what this is going to look like. Basically our pointed out model for what, the next 90 days should look like. And ideally, we hope to get to. That's not necessarily the destination, but what's our plan to get to that destination that we talked about a little bit yesterday. We probably will spend more time on that destination at some point too. That may or may not happen on today's episode. But I know that I have met my goal. Day number one was up well before the sun this morning. We are sitting here coming bright and early, about 7 a.m. now. I know both of us have been at it pretty early this morning too. So I've got about 5 points that I want to talk about and to talk through some of what I've already done this morning too. I mean, Brian, tell me what we've had a night to sleep on it. Tell me what are your thoughts kind of going in day two now of the challenge?
Good morning, Frank. Yeah, I'm already cooked my eggs, threw in a little cheese, and got my coffee. So it's never too early for me once I have those things in hand. Tactics are what we're talking a little bit about today. Those tactics, one of the things I've learned is the best laid plans usually get upset pretty quickly. I'm got, like I said, a list of five that we can go through and kind of bounce back and forth a little bit. But I fully understand from my experience in the past that what we put together as a plan may quickly change. I'm pretty pumped about it. Obviously from hopefully everybody's listened to the first episode as they're listening to this, and they know the challenges ahead of us. Just to recap, I'm going to be working on putting together, and we're calling this now the Two Kings Challenge, a plan of a rejuvenation and really a genesis of our Asheville office. Frank, you're going to be working on the Charlotte one. So let's go through these points. I'm excited about it. We got a lot to do today, and let's see where we are.
Yeah, and our goal definitely as we go through this, if you listen to episode one, you heard some of this. We want to talk through some of the resources and tools that we use too. They may be helpful to you, they may not be, but different books that we have read have different influences that we have both on us personally and professionally in terms of growing, and then also some of the tools that we just use office wide. Some of it's number tracking, some of those, other little pieces to the puzzle that we think all fit to what we have been able to be successful at least at this point. So you may hear some of that just as kind of a little bit of a segue into that part. But let's go ahead and get it going. I'm ready. My number one thing, my number one plan in terms of how we can get Charlotte off the ground. And this one is, well, let me just spit it out first. Networking is what I'm going to call my point number one. I have distinguished networking from marketing. They are obviously they go hand in hand. I think that almost all networking is marketing to a certain extent. But for purposes of this, I know what the distinction is in my mind between these two. And Traditionally, we have found that you cannot, networking is a difficult one to rely on. If you move an attorney or you move a staff person, paralegal, whatever, into a new office, it is very, very difficult to rely on them to do networking. When I first started at King Law, we had certain requirements that were there in terms of monthly obligations, like go to a Chamber of Commerce event, go to a dinner, buy somebody's lunch, all these little things that we had attempted to force on people attempted to force may not be the right word, but encouraged in terms of those monthly obligations. We certainly didn't find that we were getting a lot of our um, return on that requirement. And a lot of it's due to what intensity that you put into it. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but what I would say is this. We may not can control how much time somebody else is going to put in to networking, meeting people, reaching out to those people. But for the next 90 days, I can control how much time that I put into that networking. So that is maybe it's not necessarily straight out of the book from some of our other lessons that we, have learned from our, both from reading and some other parts in terms of the coaching side of this and growing as a coach. But I think at this point that for Charlotte to be successful in the next 90 days, it's going to require me to network. And in March of 2020, networking changed probably forever. I can't tell you the last, we were talking about this yesterday. I don't know the last time we had a continuing education in-person course. I can't remember the last time that we had a true big get-together bar meeting in some of the counties that we're in. Some of those things are starting to come back. But a lot of what we have known traditionally has gone by the wayside, and it's probably gone in a certain form forever. So I think there's some adaptation that needs to take place there, but also I think I can use that as an advantage too, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that part. But I think that by there not being a lot of these things, it does start to become more of a, it's less you're getting hit up all the time for these type of things and more that it may be unique and be an area that we can stand out if we ask somebody about lunch or, doing some of these things. I also do plan to use this podcast or this YouTube cast itself as kind of a lead in to some of those meetings and some of that networking. I have started on that this morning, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But one of the things that I think is going to be really important, and one of the problems that we've seen in some of these offices, is finding a good case manager or paralegal. So what I did was start with the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, your alma mater, paralegal certificate program. And I went down the list and I emailed the directors and a couple of the professors there and just touched base with them to see, if maybe they'd be interested in giving me 5 or 10 minutes of their time to talk briefly about what their graduates of that program are looking for in an employer and what they're seeing in the market. And, so my plan there, again, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but my plan there is to again take a page out of our friend Grant Cardone's book, 10X, and do 10 of those per day. Maybe connecting with one person is great, but if you really want to try to connect with one person, you need to attempt to connect to 10. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And my plan is to reach out to 10 people every single day in the Charlotte area, just in hopes of getting some time there. And hopefully we'll get some good content moving forward for this show too.
That sounds excellent, Frank. We didn't share each other's list before we got started on purpose to include this. So you're going to see some overlap, but I'm hoping, if this podcast was just for the two of us, just to build this challenge, it will be worth it. But I'm hoping other people do get a chance to listen to it. And if you're listening to this right now and you think, God, I could never just pick up the phone and cold call 10 people or just send an email without knowing them at all, understand that Frank and I are going to have that same apprehension. I mean, it truly is. It's not like we are some kind of different humans or that we don't exist. We have that same thing. But if you want it bad enough, you've got that passion for it, almost always it's worth that call. You end up making some kind of benefit, even if it goes nowhere. You could just say, here, now that was an interesting call. I just had a lawyer call me and ask me for help, and that program, that's what they do, and I promise you, you will find some benefit no matter what that is. And I just know that it already gets me like geared up knowing that you're going to do that. And the other thing that is, I believe, what anybody can hear from you, Frank, as you're talking, is you don't do much by way of just talk. I mean, you're going to do it, and I think that that's the thing. You just jump right in, and I tell you, it is a little embarrassing to tell people like, oh yeah, we're trying to put together a podcast like 10,000 other people across the country and in all these different ways. And I think like, oh, they're going to roll their eyes, or they're going to think that it's cringy. It's going to do all these things that are issues. But you just nailed it. I realized this is my intro. This is my intro to people. Say like, hey, I'm putting this together, so I need your help on these things, because everything on our list is going to require other people's help. So yeah, I'm really pumped up. That sounds like a good one. My number one is, and I think that you scattered a little bit as you were talking there, and you touched on it, but I want to keep my number one as team building, because in 90 days I've got to build a team. King Law Offices has been around since 2002. We have been in, I don't know how many different buildings. I don't know how many different places that have labeled themselves as being King Law. And over time, I have a side hustle of owning buildings that we've been involved in. Never once have I mistakenly thought that King Law was about a building. Never once did I think that King Law was about a sticker or a marketing tactic. I've always thought of King Law as being people. And we have some awesome people. And let me just say, if anybody thinks that Frank and I are are King Law, you're sadly mistaken. There is a ton of people. We have almost 70 employees that are doing work and probably roll their eyes every time we come into the room, because we're going to ask them to do something incredible, crazy, out of the box that they've never done before. And we have the kind of people that don't ask questions; they get it done, and that's a pretty awesome place to be in. So, team building. Currently, and I mentioned this in my first podcast. In my assessment of what my team is, I have a grand total of 0 attorneys living in Buncombe County. I have an attorney who just moved to Hendersonville, and for those of you who don't know that geography, that means he's about 30 to 40 minutes away from the office, and he works a lot out of our Hendersonville office. I have a full-time case manager who is new and is still learning the ropes as it comes to what we're doing, and that's it. That's essentially what I have, and then I have a vast amount of resources from other places. I did a little work of my own as well. I have a bead on a possible team member. He doesn't know it yet. He's working for somebody else. So I'm not going to say anything about his name or anything else to tip anything off. But he doesn't know it yet. But we're going to have a meeting on Monday. It's Thursday right now while we're talking. So he is not aware, but I'm going to make it happen. I put it on my schedule. Now I just have to follow up and get it on his. And if it's not him, it will be somebody. But I'm working, and then I did a little bit of work on an internal move with one of our attorneys that I think would be a perfect fit for my team in Asheville. And I've talked a little bit with her about what that might look like, and I think there's some excitement there. She's also young, so I may be putting together a young, scrappy team. And if that's the case, we may be playing some zone defense, some all the tricks of a coach that's dealing with some youth that might need a little bit of extra care. I would love to build a centerpiece attorney around that, and 90 days gives me an opportunity to be able to do that. The quicker I can put that team to place, makes some sense. I would not mind having 3 attorneys and 2 case managers. I think that's probably the right size for where we're going to start. With all due respect to our last book, I'll do my best to 10x that stuff too, and one day, have it set up where we could be a 20 attorney kind of firm in a nice building in Asheville, and I'm going to be thinking from that standpoint from the beginning. So I'm looking for some people that could be leaders, who could be recruiters, but my number one goal is to build a team, and I want to do that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I'm glad. I've noticed from your first one, we kind of went. I will kind of circle back to some of the team stuff, so I think it might work out well there in terms of how that plays out, even though it wasn't necessarily planned that way. But yeah, the team, I think, that is certainly an advantage that you have at this point in terms of being able to have some of those pieces ready to go. Um, I I do have, well, we'll talk about it, but I have some of those pieces ready to go, but just may not be as much help in 90 days as what some of yours could be. Um, the second one, my second point, and this one, again, when we talk about the changes in the world, it may force this one to change too. And it's a little bit, it would have certainly been the norm um, back prior to COVID. It is not so much anymore, so it feels a little radical. But my second one is I want some sort of date, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on in person because thinking through this, and obviously it ties in with the first. But I want some sort of grand opening, some sort of presence, event, a date that I can put on the calendar to build towards. And I think as I go through this networking phase, having something to push them into at the end of that, I think is going to be important for keeping that momentum instead of it just being, hey, I talked to this guy, good conversation, or I hated him, or whatever that conversation is. But that's the last time I heard from him. We just had this and there's no follow up. I think by setting a date on the calendar and pushing towards that, that is my goal number two, is to go ahead and do that. And I have it listed as number two. It doesn't necessarily mean that timing is going to happen as the second thing, but I think the timing of it, or at least putting it on the calendar, I think is step number two as it flows through with that networking side. We have a fantastic new location there. You touched on a little bit yesterday, right in downtown. Can see, the NBA arena. You can see a lot of what Charlotte has to offer there from that building itself, and we really want to showcase that too. Whether that's a virtual, opening, or if it makes sense to do it in person, would love to do that too. But whatever we can get some traffic and at least keep that momentum as I'm working through the networking part. So that's my number two. I know that's it's simplistic, but I think that by combining some of these other things with it, it may have the effect that I want.
I love it. I love it. That is going to be so awesome. And that's the kind of attitude we've taken through the entire COVID time period. Is we spread out across red counties, blue counties, all different kind of thought processes across the political scheme, across the any kind of dynamic. We have a diverse workforce, a lot of different ideas and thoughts going across that. But what we've tried to do is to say, look, we still believe it's important for people to be able to gather. And if we can do that safely, we can do that in a great way. And when people gather, things happen. And that is a gathering. And I can just see you right now going down, I mean, downtown Charlotte. You're going to have flags up across the way. You're going to have a big event. I can't wait to have the video played on this show. I will definitely be there supporting you. I will call all my friends in Charlotte. Like you said, I went to UNC Charlotte. My brother lives within walking distance of the Charlotte National Building, beautiful downtown location where we are. So I'll see if I can get some of his friends out and see what we can do. And I imagine, if you can feed my brother, he'll be there. I know your brother operates on a similar mechanism. So even if it's just the King and McFarland family reunion, we will make sure we have some people out there and generate some excitement. So that sounds really awesome. Uh,
Charlotte's
you know,
Charlotte's too big of a city for my brother though. There has to be a football game or a basketball game for him to venture to the big city.
hey,
So
look,
even food, I don't know.
I bet you that Michael Jordan has an office somewhere at that Spectrum Center. I mean, he built the building. Uh, I, I, I fully expect for Michael Jordan to be sharing a drink with Cam Newton and McCaffrey, sitting back and really soaking in some some North Carolina sweet tea and enjoying a good evening. I'm pumped up about it. My number two is you're very practical, and I'm in a different direction on this one. That's pretty typical of of some of our discussions. But I honestly believe that the next thing that I've got to be able to do on my tactics is build the numbers. And I know that that sounds boring. That sounds accounting. That sounds even a little bean counterish. But I strongly believe that unless I put together the numbers and the expectation for that team in my number one that I'm building, it's not going to work. And yeah, we have our little competition, and we picked out our 8 categories yesterday that we're going to grade this thing on. But I'm going to fill out numbers for each one of those things and what my expectations are, and it's going to be through the roof. It's going to be, we're not here to just, hey, we'll dip our toe in and see what it's like. I mean, we're going full force. I fully anticipate. Like I said, there's some awesome lawyers in Asheville. They're doing great job for their clients, and that is not at all a competition format. But I want everybody in the Asheville area to know we're world class. The buck stops right there at that office in terms of what kind of representation you're going to get. And I know the people who I have in mind are going to be able to handle any of the kind of cases in the areas that we practice in, and they're going to blow the mind off of what the area is. So, for me, it's about dreaming big and putting a real solid number to this thing. That will hopefully pep me up, and we'll get everybody there. But we will concentrate on numbers, and let me tell you, we're going to post them up on the back of a door that the public can't see, and they're going to look at it all day long, and we're going to make sure we're going to chart that thing up, and we're going to make a difference. And I'm going to put some rewards behind those numbers. It says, hey, we get this. We're going to do some pretty awesome stuff. And I think that's a big piece of what I'm trying to build in this Asheville one. So number two for me is build the numbers.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And in terms of what we do, generally, it's a big part of our weeks too. We struggle with that a little bit on whether to how much to make numbers a part of what we do week in and week out. But I think that the evidence is there for us in terms of if you don't put goals on these things, and there is a lot of talk about goals. I love goals as an idea. I think you need to have them. I think you need to have objectives. What level to put those goals at, is obviously up for debate. Do you want them to be reachable? You certainly don't want people to settle for their goals, but I think that putting those numbers out there and making people aware, and it's not just numbers like how much money do we make. It's when we talked about yesterday, reviews, some of these other ways that we can do this, follow-up calls, complaints. We have a system that we call SOS cases, which is, upset clients or situations that we need to scale up and deal with on a higher level. Reducing SOS calls, reducing client complaints, all those parts can be objectives that you can, tangibly relate to. So I think that when you hear us say numbers, it doesn't just mean like how much money did you make, Truthfully, we look at a long host of numbers, including our our internal surveys too, and where our scores stack up on that, following up and communication and all this part. So I definitely think that's a great one. And our offices that do look at the numbers more have more success. It's pretty simple. Um, I'm going to move on to my number three, and this one's going to sound pretty broad, and it is broad, but generally it's marketing. I mean, and when I say marketing, um, we have not talked money at all about this challenge and what our plans are for that. I know my grand opening has a little bit of a budget on it too. We haven't talked about those numbers. We probably need to do that to see where we're at. Obviously, you can make $1 million and you spend 2 million. Those things could obviously factor in. But we want to talk through those parts. But marketing is, in this sense, marketing comes with a price tag typically. The way that I mean it here, I'm not talking about those kind of grassroots personal activities. That's marketing too, the networking side, but I'm dividing it out. And for marketing here, I'm talking mostly about our online presence. What is our online presence and how do we increase it? And what's the best bang for the buck there? And if we don't have a budget for those things, then I've got to find it. I've got to figure out ways to make that money for the Charlotte office and invest it back in because I think that's really going to be worth it and pay off in this situation. So maybe we can work through it in some direction on that in terms of what our budget is. Like I said, we haven't had those conversations at all, but I do want to go through that, and we do online marketing in a couple of different ways. Um, and I will butcher these names, so you help me out here, Brian, a little bit on this front, if you can. But I know that AdWords is still a big one. We use AdWords. We have an AdWords campaign that I think our AdWords campaign is managed by Digital Rain. Is that
That's
accurate? And then we have a couple
that's right.
places. Um,
Located right there in Charlotte, North Carolina, one of their branches. So might be worthwhile to do a little stop in for you. I don't know. I don't know what their facilities are like. I just know that Charlotte's on their stuff they send me. So
yeah, we have been using them for a couple years now. Have a good relationship there. A lot of that. Has traditionally been, I'm still not a native to the language. And, so a lot of those parts do sound foreign. And you think, like, obviously that word's not going to get any traffic, or this one isn't. And then you see, we have done a really good job in a lot of our other markets of, you know, I don't want to say perfecting, but when it comes to family law, we have done a really good job of generating a lot of leads from AdWords. And I think pushing that into the Charlotte market is a much more expensive one. To get that kind of placement in Charlotte costs a lot more. So you have to figure out, we have to budget our time and energy there a lot better. Hopefully, that is something that my conversations with Digital Rain moving forward may be helpful in. Um, the other one, and this is my personal favorite, but I don't even remember exactly what it's called. But when you pull up Google now and you search for somebody, there are these listings that come up, right at the top that are the Google approved or
hmm
it's the local services. And I know I'm not saying that right. I'll get back with you on that part, but
relatively
the
new
local,
feature for Google. That's true.
yeah, I'd say about in the last year and a half or so. But the local services ads can be a much more cost efficient way to do that and to have some of the same recognition, meaning when you search Google for these things, that you do pop up as a lawyer in this area. We have a company that helps us out there too. We have been, kind of experimenting a lot with this and kind of increasing some of our presence in different practice areas, criminal. and with those more specific DWIs, I think, and family law is obviously still a big bulk of that, but location specific matters. And right now we have a location, but very little Google presence. We have no reviews, or like I said, maybe one review. There's not a lot there, so pushing that forward is going to be a big part too. But that gives just some of the breakdown of what we look at in terms of that marketing side. It's going to take some conversations and some work to figure out a good plan for Charlotte. I think we are getting calls. We're not getting in office appointments, but we're getting calls. So there's some basis there in terms of our Mecklenburg presence from the online marketing that we're doing, but just seeing if there are ways that we can optimize that and what we can do to increase those calls.
Yeah, our group that does that work is called Market by Market, a little tongue twister. I will try to put, since those guys have helped us out at Digital Rain and Market by Market in the
Yeah,
notes, I'll
market by
try to do
market.
a link to their sites if anybody's interested in talking to them. They do a great job for us, and we've gone to a lot of different places before we landed on them. My number three, and I will point out that one of our favorite judges just texted me earlier. So that's how important this podcast is. I mean, I'm just putting off judges texting me to get to work through this. It's early; they're not working. I promise you. And it's not even a legal issue. I don't think the judges text me anymore about legal issues. Now they text me about networking. What do you about this and some ideas about that. Um, then my number three is phone call our team and network. And I had put in, even though you had already, you mentioned it in your one, I put in parentheses 10x because that's the very same thing. Um, I think that we should talk about budget. In fact, why don't we star that and make that part of our next podcast? Because I think it would that our listeners would be very interested to hear that because we're going to want to do this a little bit shoestring budget just because we like to do it that way and to make it a bigger challenge. I think that we would if we spent a ton of money and got clients, the two of us would feel kind of disappointed in the competition. I mean, we're going to want to make it a little bit on things, but one of the things that doesn't cost money is calling people. Um, you just pick up the phone and you call people, and people you can call, you can send emails to, shooting text messages out. These are all things that we can do. We do have some presence in Asheville. I know some people, and I definitely know people who know people. And I think that sometimes that's just as important. And just working the tree. Once I have my team, once I built my numbers out, then it's definitely going to be a lot of laborious phone calling kind of work. Since we talked about that earlier and apprehension and all that goes into it, I get it. Yeah, there was a time where we used to expect our associates to be part of it. We just realized that they sucked. They were just not, they really weren't good at doing that kind of work. We got to find the people that can do that work. And as it turns out, there are people who love doing that work, and finding the people that love it, they're going to do it the best. Um, but the buck does stop with us, and I know that a lot of these phone calls, I'm going to be the one making them. And when I call somebody, I will be specific. I will say, hey, it's Brian. We're going full bore in Asheville right now, really trying to build that office up. And I'm wondering what you can do to help and let them talk a little bit. And they'll say, you know what I'd like you to do? And I'll be specific. Can you send me 3 clients? Is there 3 people you're working with right now that you think would be a good person to do that with? And if I can be specific, if I can make that request, I tend to get good results, and sometimes it's even more. And then other times I don't, and all I've lost is a couple of minutes of a phone call. But I promise you, in the end, that will make a difference. I have a secret weapon that I use. This isn't my little thank you cards, but it's just got our logo on it, so it's off of blank. It might be a thank you, it might be a request, it may just be, hey, saw you on LinkedIn, that was an awesome article. There's a power to the pen and ink and an old-fashioned mail. These are the kind of things that are important to me. A phone call to our team, our networks with specific requests. That's my number three.
Yeah, and I know time is getting away from us a little bit this morning, so try to pick it up just a little bit on these last couple. But I touched on this earlier in terms of my networking and where I was starting there. But my number four is to hire the right case manager. When it comes to team building on this front, I think that this is probably this is probably the most important hire for Charlotte, more important than what we get from our attorneys and what they might do. We can find attorneys that want to go to Charlotte. I mean, we have been turning away attorneys that have wanted to move to Charlotte, wanted to work in the Charlotte office for years because we didn't have the presence, or that we didn't have, that kind of built-in infrastructure to handle what we're wanting to do now in Charlotte. So hiring attorneys, I don't think is going to be a problem, but hiring the right case manager is 1000% going to be one of the more difficult parts. And, obviously hiring is tricky in general. I think we have at least, maybe not both of us, but in terms of the firm, we have at least one interview every single day. I think that it happens for some position that we have. So, to be able to take those and fill certain spots with the right people is always challenging. And when it comes to Charlotte, we're dealing with a different kind of pay expectation, a different kind of balance to it in terms of remote versus in office, and a lot of other challenges that we have seen in some of our bigger cities that we don't necessarily see in our smaller towns because life hasn't changed as much there as it has in Charlotte, and the expectations may not have changed as much either. So adapting, on that front, I think is going to be a big piece of this, and I'm hopeful that my conversations with some of these paralegal programs may be fruitful on that point. And if we haven't touched on it before, in our Charlotte office currently, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, we have one attorney only, and that attorney is doing personal injury work, which is not a small part of our practice by any stretch. He's super busy. He's doing a lot of work on these cases and doing a fantastic job with them. But that is not as big of a part of our overall model. And he does not do any consults right now on other cases. He's not doing like what we call our trust or billable work. So that is very different, and it is almost like a standalone person. So there's no case manager there with him currently. He works with a case manager that he works remotely with. So no case manager present, no real consult presence currently. So let's start with the case manager with number four and see if we can't hire the right person there.
Yeah, that's such an important hire. That'll be great. I talked about that a little bit with my team building number one. My number four is creating great team habits. We have one of the most disciplined firms that you will find. We have to. We're in multiple locations. We do a lot of that through a program called Sweet Processes. Those Sweet Processes, there's over 400 different things that if you work with us, it's accessible by your phone. It tells you everything from how to ask for time off, all the way to here's a motion for summary judgment in a divorce case. It has a lot of specifics, and it's a real how-to. The only problem is that it only works if you use it. And what I have found over time is people will not rise up to their goals, I believe is the way that they say it in the book I'm about to say, but they will fall down to their procedures. And what that really means is we have to create great team habits. So what I'm going to be working on is building up habits of, hey, you come into the office, you turn on the lights. When the lights go on, you make sure your computer is up and running. You check you take a look, you look at your email, you take your email, turn it into a task list, then you look at your pending files, the files that people have met with us but they haven't retained yet. You're reaching out to that group, and so on. And we will build out a habit one. And I don't mind once this is all built out, sharing that habit template that we put together, because it will definitely involve our networking, because every person will be a part of that networking. And so building that up. I'm a huge proponent of a book called Atomic Habits. That book, Atomic Habits, I'll make sure that everybody in Nashville gets that, so we're all working from the same page. There's something about getting a book from your boss, even though we don't think of it that way, but that's the way I think of it growing up. I was just saying, like, hey, maybe I'll read this book, but even if I don't, I know what Brian's got in mind, because it comes out of that that written page, or listening to something on Audible, kind of starts to sound like, hey, that's what Brian believes in. Atomic Habits is one of those books. I probably have 20 books or so that I feel that way. Right, and I've given you many books, I guess, over the time, Frank, and I've seen you pass that along as well. So number 4, creating great team habits. We'll get right to that.
Yeah, just to touch briefly on that too, because habits, I know there are a few books that we have that deal in habits. That Atomic Habits is a great one. That's James Clear, I think, is the author.
That's right.
And we have also spent a lot of time in the coaching habit too, which I'll tell you this, Brian and I both, I know, are big on audibles. We spend a lot of time in the car. Audible it has rejuvenated my reading life. Um, I think we should make time to read, actually read, and I've been a little bit better about that. But certainly, Audible has kind of saved the day on on what that is. I know I heard a stat that basically the top 5% or maybe 1% of earners in the country read on average 60 books a year, and the rest of everybody else averages less than one per year. So it, that factors in reading, expanding your knowledge, and we'll mention a lot of books there too. But those two both definitely play a big role. And when it comes to habits in general, I know for me, you know, y'all will hear me talk about I'm a morning person in general, but it's because of habits. I get up at 5 every day. I don't snooze. I have a daily routine that I do right when I get up. I have to put clothes on. That's another thing. Even if I'm working from home or whatever, I have to put, at least I may not be suited up today. I am working from home, but I have to put my clothes on, when I get ready after I get out of the shower. I have to do those. And so I think habits are a very big part of getting to where we need to be. So um, I, I agree with you completely on that one in terms of what we need to do there. Um, and just moving forward to my last point, which I touched on some last time, but that's having a daily attorney presence for consults on non-personal injury cases. We don't have that right now. Like we talked about, we do have a junior partner who wants to move to Charlotte later this year. He will be there probably full time. He is taking a lot of consultations with new clients on Charlotte cases right now, but the vast majority of those are phone. Um, that's okay. We have increased our number of phone consults dramatically over the last, over 2 years now, or right at 2 years now. But we still see a larger percentage of people who retain our firm for legal services if they meet with us in person. They're more serious about it. They're more likely to engage with us and have that type of relationship that lends itself to that, lawyer-client relationship moving forward. So increasing that presence is definitely going to be a big part. And I might have to get creative with that one. I don't know that we actually will have an attorney in that office every day, but figuring out ways to increase that daily presence for consults may involve me some too. But figuring out how to make that work, I think, is what the next 90 days will look like.
That's awesome. And my last one, number 5, is one we've talked about too: blog and website. We really didn't mention blog as much by name, but I think it's pretty clear. And I want to do 10 times that. Whatever we decide. If you're like, okay, well, we're going to do one of these a week for Asheville, we're going to do 10 of them, and we're going to flood that to where that website is going to look flush, full of it, and Google reviews, and really tighten that thing up. I'm loving it. I pulled up the websites we were talking. I don't normally love a 4-star. I'm always a little weird about a 4-star, but the comment is so great. Kimberly B on January 22nd gave us a 4-star in Asheville. She put broke, period. But the gentleman was nice. Gotta love it. I mean, that's one of my one of my favorite reviews on here. My experience identified good quality, value, professionalism, and the staff was extremely responsive to helping. These are five. It's a 5 out of 5 stars. These are stars from this year, and right now we're just starting into February. So I'm pumped up. We have put together some of these things, but we've got to make sure that our blog, most people now barely ever touch a website. They look at the Google side, and they make a phone call off of that. So the website doesn't tend to be as important as it used to be. I'm not 100% sure that's not true in law. I still think that people want to see and they want to dig in that a little bit more. And I know that content can help us out in other ways as well. Original, good, solid content that really reflects back, because we got a lot of competition out there in Asheville, and I want to make sure that we're reaching out to them. So that's my 5. That's your 5. Sounds like we got quite a good start for where we are.
Yeah, I definitely think we've got at least a roadmap to get us to where we want to go. And then maybe next time we can talk a little more about where we are and then where we want to go actually and what that looks like. So um, that
Right.
I think should wrap it up. I know we're pushing up against about the same time as our episode yesterday. So that will do it for episode 2. And check back. It'll probably be another week or so, or at least a week. This time next week, we will give some updates on where we are in terms of the Two Kings Challenge as we deal with Asheville and Charlotte, and branching out and opening those for expanding those offices to try to grow them to where we want to be.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you on the next episode.